Currently, it is 45 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell with your noon news update. In local news, a man is accusing a St. Louis police officer of beating him with a flashlight last year. Lawyers for Jamal White filed a lawsuit last week in St. Louis federal court. The suit claims Officer Adam Feeman hit White with a flashlight while arresting him in August. White's attorneys say he wasn't armed and wasn't presenting a physical threat at the time. Also, conservative commentator Jamie Ullman is out of a job at KDNL-TV in St. Louis. His show was canceled after he threatened to assault teenage activist David Hogg on Twitter last month. The post sparked the beginnings of an advertiser boycott. Hogg is among the survivors calling for gun control in the wake of the Florida school shooting in February. And a man is dead after he was shot last month in North St. Louis. Police say Xavier Everett was gunned down March 28th in the 4700 block of St. Louis Avenue. He died after suffering a gunshot wound to the head. In national news, President Trump's top Homeland Security advisor is stepping down. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders is confirming that Tom Bossert is resigning. Sanders said President Trump thanks him for his patriotic service and wishes him well. Sanders did not give a reason for Bossert leaving. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is in the hot seat today. He's set to testify in a Senate hearing today and will follow up in a House hearing tomorrow. He's expected to apologize for Facebook's data sharing controversy and answer questions from lawmakers. Zuckerberg will be pressed about Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting group that improperly tapped into data of millions of Facebook users. President Trump says attorney-client privilege is dead after the FBI raided his personal attorney's office. The FBI also raided the hotel room and home of Michael Cohen. The raids were reportedly a result of a tip from special counselor Robert Mueller's investigations, but not connected to the Russia probe. Instead, they had to do with a $130,000 payment Cohen made to porn star Stormy Daniels. And Michigan State University counselors are being accused in a federal lawsuit of discouraging a freshman student from reporting a sexual assault to police in April 2015. The lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court in Grand Rapids, and the three men's basketball players are not identified. The woman making the allegations was an 18-year-old at the time and met the three at an East Lansing bar after the Spartans were eliminated from the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Now on to the weather. Today, it is cloudy right now, but it's supposed to get sunny later with a high of 51 and a low of 39, and then you're not going to believe this, but according to weather.com, tomorrow will be mostly sunny with a high of 71 and a low of 55. Thursday, sunny with a high of 76 and a low of 61. Friday, we'll have evening thunderstorms and wind with a high of 71, low of 61. And Saturday, we will have showers with a high of 64, a low of 40. So we might have found spring. It could be around here somewhere. There is a possibility. Tomorrow might maybe be a nice day. This could also all be a lie. It's the weather. I got nothing. Anyway, currently it is 45 degrees here on the campus of Florissant Valley Community College. I'm Jell, and this was your noon news update. But please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, because after a short break, we will be back with GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Until then, here is Back Pay by Night Owl here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was Back Pay by Night Owl here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I actually really like that song. Anyway, well, I would like to welcome you to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and we like to kick the show off by talking about the new game releases for this week, what's coming out next week, as well as what anime are in theaters. So, starting it off, PlayStation 4, what you got for us? Well, we got Call of Duty World War II, The War Machine, which I assume is some DLC. Extinction. Masters of Anima, which I swear has been released like 5 times now. I'm using the game FAQs list, okay? And sometimes the same game shows up repeatedly for some reason. Anyway, Owlboy's out, and I hear that's a really, really good platformer. Have not played it myself, but I've heard nothing but good things, and it's out on PlayStation 4 now. Also, Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition, Starlit Adventures, Super Daryl Deluxe, and Rogue Aces will be out in 2 days, and then they're saying Senko no Rande 2 should be out the 13th, but I swear that was already released. Anyway, Xbox One, what you got? Xbox One got Extinction, Masters of Anima, and Owlboy as well. And then tomorrow it will be getting Bomb Slinger, Deep Ones, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, which I've heard a lot of people say very nice things about. It's from Ninja Theory, which is the makers of Heavenly Sword and the DMC reboot. So love it or hate it, that's the thing. And also Robocraft Infinity and Ys Origin, which I thought already got an Xbox One release, but whatever. I've already highly recommended that game. That game was a blast. And then on the 13th, Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition, and then Earthlock on the 14th. Nintendo Switch, what you got for us? Nintendo Switch got The Bunker, Masters of Anima, Super Daryl Deluxe. Tomorrow it will be getting Bomb Slinger. On the 12th, it will be getting As Divine Hearts, which is a port of a cell phone RPG from Kemco. It's a weird thing Kemco does. Kemco, releases a new retro-style JRPG every month on cell phones. It's kind of odd. Kind of neat. I'm a little on the fence on it, but they've been good to poke at. Anyway, As Divine Hearts comes out on the 12th, along with Burly Men at Sea, Regalia of Men and Monarchs Royal Edition, Rogue Aces, Sheltered Generations, Streets of Red, Devil's Dare Deluxe, and Word Search by Paugi. And on the 15th, 2064 Read-Only Memories Integral. And that would count the 16th as next week. The 3DS has nothing coming until May. And the Vita has Rogue Aces this week. Moving on, next week, the PlayStation 4 will be getting Don't Starve Mega Pack, Pinball FX 3, Star Wars The Last Jedi, Pinball Table DLC, and Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, which, there's a lot of stuff in that game. I've heard some slightly mixed things. Some people are saying Yakuza 0 is better overall. One of the things to remember with Yakuza 6 versus Yakuza 0, and this is something that really gets lost in the shuffle, is that Yakuza 0 was actually a PS3 game. It was released on PS3 and PS4 simultaneously. Yakuza 6 is actually a whole new engine made specifically for PS4, and so I hear the world's a little bit smaller because of that. Tends to happen with engine reboots, but the arcades look packed. I might just be buying that to go to the arcades in the game. Anyway, on the 20th, the new God of War also comes out for PlayStation 4. Xbox One next week will be getting Don't Starve Mega Packs, Pinball FX 3, Star Wars The Last Jedi, and Atomic Heist. Meanwhile, the Nintendo Switch next week is looking forward to, Death Road to Canada. I have a friend who plays a lot of that. It's a very nice little indie pixel art game that's sort of like the Oregon Trail with zombies, where everyone's trying to make it Canada because zombies don't like the cold, so it's safe in Canada. Anyway, after that, on the 17th, it's spring again, and Wild Guns Reloaded. And then the 19th has Brakes Are for Losers and Neo Atlas 1469. And then Nintendo Labo comes out on the 20th. Which, let's see, Toy-Con 01 Variety Kit and Toy-Con 02 Robot Kit, along with The Way Remastered. And there's nothing really on Vita or 3DS. Meanwhile, in anime, there's not too much on the horizon other than The Cat Returns as part of Studio Ghibli Fest 2018. That will be in theaters April 22nd dubbed and April 23rd subbed, and then back again April 25th dubbed. And that concludes our new games and anime release list thingamabobber. We will once again take a very short break, and when we get back, it will be time for video game news and such. So please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Coming up next is Hero by Losing Controllers, here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much for listening. That was Hero by Losing Controllers here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and I swear I was not responsible for that. Just showed up randomly in the playlist, and cripes, I haven't heard that song in eons. Anyway, welcome to back to GameBabble Live, our video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. I'm your host, Jell, joined by spontaneous sidekick Sully.
Hey guys, it's Sully again. I was here last week. I'm the PC guru out of the two of us here, while Jill here's a bit more on the console side.
Very much so. And so, we just got done with our new game releases and what anime are in theaters, which unfortunately not much, but I'm sure that'll pick up probably next month. Anyway, now it is on to the random news. Probably the biggest news of last week was the fact that, yes, they have indeed confirmed that they are doing a remaster of the first three Spyro games. We will get a Spyro collection, Spyro trilogy, just like we did with Crash Bandicoot. They've already started running ads for it. It is confirmed for PS4 and Xbox One. A Switch version might maybe have been leaked. Like, it showed up on, I think, the Mexican version of Amazon.com, so it might have just been them making an assumption, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a Switch version.
Considering there are a few Spyro Wii games, it's possible.
And the fact that the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy is coming to Switch. So,
very true.
Very plausible. One thing I found interesting, though, is that this remaster is being handled by Toys for Bob, which is a company I've been keeping such a weird eye on. They actually made Star Control way back in the day, along with The Unholy War. And then they are actually the people who started the Skylanders series. So I believe we can now officially say Skylanders is over. Had a good run. But yes, Skylanders does appear to be over, considering both of the companies that have been producing these Skylanders games are doing Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. The reason I'm mildly concerned is because Toys for Bob, even though they're the ones who started the Skylanders series, they definitely made the weaker games in it. Like, pretty much unquestionably, the two Vicarious Visions Skylanders were way better. But we'll see how they do with Spyro. Hopefully it'll turn out good. I'm not a huge Spyro fan, but I know there's a lot of people who have been demanding this.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. I've seen a lot of stuff on social media all over the place, actually, about how excited they are.
Yeah, so I'm hoping it turns out good. Moving right along, it looks like Ys 8 is finally on track for PC. It should be out on the 16th. Also, there is a Switch version, which will be coming a bit later, and that will have DLC for both the PS4 and Vita versions available, because they had some DLC costumes that were PS4 exclusive, some that were Vita exclusive. Switch will have both, yay. For whatever that's worth. Moving on, One Piece Grand Cruise VR will be hitting both Japan and America May 22nd. I'm excited for that, even though I'm sure it's not going to be very much of a game. I'm totally okay with some or less in One Piece. Moving on, Shermie is confirmed for SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy, and Blue Mary will be coming to King of Fighters 14 April 12th. So, 2 days, Blue Mary will be there, and I believe that will be the whole pack with Hydern, that new girl, and oh yeah, Oswald. Yeah, good to see Oswald back. Looks like Dragon Quest XI is confirmed coming to the US, but we will not be getting the 3DS version, and the Switch version will be coming after the PS4 version, because the Switch version isn't even out in Japan yet. They don't fully know what they're doing. They're still putting that together. So we'll be getting Dragon Quest XI on PS4, and supposedly it will be uncensored. I hold my... I don't want to say anything until the game is actually out, because we've seen more than a few games say we're going to be uncensored, and then they censor something stupid. Usually it's something minor, but there have been exceptions. But, yeah, no, Dragon Quest XI should be coming over intact on PS4. Bit of a shame we aren't getting the 3DS version, though. I know there's not a lot on 3DS, and it's kind of being phased out.
Yeah, they really haven't done a lot with it. I feel that there could have been a lot more going on there.
Well, the Switch is kind of taking that market, and it's honestly been frustrating to me, because there have been so many 3DS games that have come out in the past year that I've just sat there saying, can you put it on Switch, please? Because I'd really like to play, like, Ever Oasis on a TV, and Egad Cul-de-Cept Revolution is something that really works better on a proper console, but yeah. The main reason Dragon Quest XI's 3DS release is slightly not coming out as slightly disappointing is because the 3DS and PS4 games have completely radically different graphics, even though they're the exact same game. With the PS4 actually looking like a PS4 game, and the 3DS one having cute little super deformed 3D models. But the better part is what they use the bottom screen for. Because while you're playing...
What'd they do?
While the top screen is showing the game with the 3D models, the bottom screen shows the same game, but with Super Nintendo graphics.
Alright, that has to be some of the most ingenious stuff I've heard in a while.
And the most insane, because that means they made the exact same game 3 times. Okay, I have my fingers crossed that maybe at least the Super Nintendo graphics will make it to the Switch version. Like, I really want the Switch version to have all 3 different versions of the game, but that might actually take memory, and I know that's been something...
Yeah, the Switch is kind of small for
yeah,
that.
Yeah, they haven't released the higher capacity cartridges because there was some kind of bug with them. Moving on. Final Fantasy 15 reveal, they did a big reveal thing where they said, yes, we were doing, indeed, they've said they're doing 4 more character DLC episodes, and they've confirmed them to be Arden, Aranea, Lunafreya, and Noctis, which seems like the most pointless, but okay, I guess that's how we're gonna wrap it all up. All of which, very good news. A lot of people are interested to find out more about Arden, because he was actually a very interesting villain, and so he's going to be the next DLC chapter. The only thing is, I want to know how many people bought the Royal Edition and didn't get this memo, because they said all this before the Royal Edition came out. But I know a lot of people thought the Royal Edition was the game with all the DLC. It's like, no, there's still a year more of DLC they're releasing for 15, because they just can't stop themselves. And probably also the fact that all of Square Enix's current games are in development hell right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a few news for PC. The long-awaited survival horror game that has taken the world by storm, well, not the world, quite a few people by storm with its hilarious glitches and actually really good graphics, but with no real story involved. The Forest is coming out of early access April 30th, so a couple weeks. Conan Exiles is getting a new release, believe it or not. That is May 8th. Which came as a surprise to me.
Came as a surprise to me, but that explains a lot, because I saw Conan Exiles, listed as coming for PS4 and Xbox One, and I was like, isn't that game, over and done with? But I guess they're gonna try to bring it back.
And then, finally, we have The Elder Scrolls Online Somerset coming May 21.
Good times. Well, it's time for us to take a short break. When we get back, we will certainly have even more video game news. But until then, here's Maybe Baby by 7 Shot Screamers here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening. That was What's Famous by Trenton P. featuring Chell here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. Welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. I'm your host, Joe, joined by spontaneous sidekick Sully.
We're still here.
And so, looked a little bit more into the Final Fantasy 15 DLC, and there's a lot of questions I have. Namely, there's descriptions for what each episode is supposed to be about, and some of them sound very interesting, especially the episode Luna Freya, where it's actually... no, that's too much of a spoiler, but it sounds interesting, but the weirdest one is the last one. The episode Noctis is called The Final Strike, and what it's describing is the last chapter of the game. So are we just doing a do-over of the end of the game? Is that what's going on for that? I don't understand. Either way, on top of that, they are also going to release a standalone version of Final Fantasy 15 Comrades, which was the multiplayer expansion that'll be coming in summer. And an update will also arrive in summer to coincide with this, along with a second update in winter. I've actually played Comrades, and it's pretty cool. You get to make your own character, and there's a hub town, and you team up with people, and you go and fight monsters. It's pretty cool, especially because it's like, hey, we're just adding this multiplayer bonus mode onto the main game, and it actually ties in better with the movie, Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive. But at the same time, it had really, really unbearably long load times. The way it was set up was really poorly thought out, because instead of just letting me run around the world and kill monsters, which would have worked really well because it's a big old open world, it's take a mission, get teleported to where the monsters are, fight them, go back to the hub town, which in turn causes a lot more load times doing it that way.
Yeah, it also sounds a bit repetitive after a while, one may think.
Yeah, it does, but it's kind of neat just for what it is. But
True.
yeah, it wasn't particularly expensive as an expansion pack. But yeah, I'm a little curious about it. I also want to know if that means it's getting a PC release, because that would fix a lot of things. I know if you have a good computer, the load times in Final Fantasy 15 are quite trivial, I've heard.
Yeah, it really, once you have a good PC, load times basically don't exist anymore.
Yeah, I've been watching some people play the PC version of Final Fantasy 15, and it requires a pretty darn beefy machine, but if you have one, that game can look pretty darn amazing. Moving on, they apparently also for the PC edition, they are going to release the multiplayer avatar creator for the main story, so you can just change how Noctis looks and put in a bunch of other like modding tools for it. It's like, well, that's interesting. Also, there's going to be a Shadow of the Tomb Raider collaboration for it, because Square owns Eidos now. They own Tomb Raider, so...
Interesting?
Shrug?
It's really all you can say about it. It's just interesting at this point. I guess we'll see how it turns out. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, everyone will rage about it.
Yep. Moving on, The Invisible Hours will be getting a non-VR version on PS4, Xbox One, and PC on April 24th. The Invisible Hours was actually how do I describe it? It's very much a kind of interactive story where you're seeing this narrative play out, and you kind of just play an invisible person walking around and following different characters as the story plays out. I have not played it myself, but I've seen other people poke at it in VR, and it seemed very, very interesting, and now it'll have a non-VR version. But yeah, it is pretty much just watching a murder mystery, but you're invisible, and you can follow different characters as they go about doing things. It's pretty neat.
So it's like Clue, sort of, but you're invisible, and you can see what everyone else is doing. That actually sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, it's, again, it's not really very much of a game. It's just, watching how things play out, and because the different characters go to different rooms, and they're all doing different things at different times, and then, like, you might find out that someone you weren't following was in this other room in a past scene, and so you go back and you go to that room to see what they did, and stuff like that. It seems pretty neat. Also, I know a lot of people are wondering when Pokemon for Nintendo Switch will be, but though we don't have any word on that in full yet, Yokai Watch 4 has been announced for Switch and will launch in Japan in 2018. So, that is at least something.
Last week I touched briefly on the Dark Souls remaster. There has been no... Well, there's a confirmed release date of May 25th, but there hasn't been any news on whether or not PC players will be able to upgrade to the remaster straight from the normal version for either a reduced price or for free, like they did with Scholar of the First Sin. Sadly, it looks like most PC players will probably have to pay the full price of around $40, I believe, for the PC, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox One X releases. Which isn't too bad considering it's Dark Souls, but better now, I guess. The Solaire...
I was just saying, we'll see how it turns out.
Yep, we'll see how it turns out as we get closer to May, as we get closer into the May area. The Solaire amiibo for the Switch is available for pre-order, actually. Nice
hold on. I was just going to say, we're not allowed to say prices on the air.
It wasn't going to be a price.
Just making sure.
It's a nice little Praise the Sun gesture from Dark Souls. It's available for pre-order now. I don't remember when they will be shipped, but I believe it will be sometimes around the release date of the actual game.
All right, and moving on. Hey, Disgaea 5 Complete is coming to PC May 7th, and then Disgaea 1 HD Remake hits Japan July 26th, so hey, we got some Disgaea news. Good times. Also, SNK 40th Anniversary Collection is coming in fall for the Switch. They haven't announced all the games, just a few of them, like Ikari Warriors 1 through 3, Athena, Crystallis, and more, and they're going to have both home and arcade versions of the games. Like I said, full list not yet revealed, but there is a big fancy special edition coming from, I think it's Nippon Ichi America, but I'm not sure. It's also supposed to have a big old art gallery. What's interesting is that the ports are being handled by Digital Eclipse, for better or for worse. I think they're kind of middle of the road in terms of doing emulated ports and stuff. They're not bad, but they're not great. So we'll see how that turns out closer to release. But yeah, they just announced the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection.
As I always say, nothing can be worse than the Dark Souls 1 port. From PlayStation 3 to PC. That was a big nightmare.
Oh, you'd be surprised. If I told you about what happened with the PS1 port of Voltage Fighter Gaokaiser.
I can believe it.
Yeah. The company that actually made that game went out of business before the PS1 port, so the company that did the anime ported it to PS1.
The anime.
Yeah, they did not have experience with what they were doing. The main thing there are so many things wrong with Gaokaiser on PS1, but the main thing I point out was the fact that when you tripped an enemy, they didn't fall down. Instead, they teleported to the top of the screen and fell from the sky.
That sounds like it would be hilarious to watch, though, I'm just saying.
Oh, it is. You can beat the game just by spamming slide kicks because
so bad it's good?
No, so bad I can't believe it. Because they also cut out all the endings. Most of the characters are missing their moves. You can beat the game just by spamming slide kick, because that's all the mix-up you need. Sometimes the slide kick will hit once, twice, up to 5 times. Sometimes it knocks down, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it'll even combo into itself. It's completely random. That was a disaster. But that was also Japanese only. So thankfully, most people have been spared from that nightmare. I might have researched Gaokaiser a little too hard because I wish Gaokaiser was good. I like everything about it except like the finished products. The game is terrible. The anime is terrible. It's just a good concept, though.
In a little not so recent news, but sort of relevant now, because next month the new DLC will most likely be dropping. Destiny 2's player base is not very happy. They got really tired of the repetitive grind, it seems, and just for the same old stuff. As we head into the next DLC, a lot of the players will probably pick back up again. From what it looks like, the new DLC will be called the God of Mars, and is hopefully set from a leak on the PlayStation Store to be set into next month, I believe, sometime in May, or shortly thereafter. They said, from what the leak said, it would be spring 2018. So we'll see how it is as we head into I guess technically we're still in year 1 of Destiny 2, but we're going to be near year 2, close enough. We'll see how it goes. They're not very happy.
Yeah, a lot of things have happened to the Destiny 2 player base. I don't play, but I've heard by proxy.
Yeah, they aren't very happy with how the game turned out. The story and the campaign were leagues above Destiny 1, but they just weren't happy with how the world was built and the writing was subpar. It's really all you can say for the game, really. It's fun for a bit, but then after a while it just grows stale.
Yeah, that'll happen. Moving on. For more news, we finally have a release date for Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn. It is coming June 5th, and, I'm still going to complain about the fact that they're trying to call it a Shaq Fu game, because it's not. It's Shaq Down 2. Basically, if you haven't been following that, I think they did a Kickstarter for this to do a new quote-unquote Shaq Fu game, but unlike the original Shaq Fu, which was a fighting game, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. So it could turn out better, yes, but it does make me say, what does this have to do with Shaq Fu? You're literally just piggybacking off the namesake of one of the most infamous bad fighters out there. Which I'm just going to go on record and say, as bad as Shaq Fu is, there is so much worse out there. I mean, the people who put together the original Shaq Fu, at least, they tried.
They had an idea.
They had an idea. It was made by the people who did, what was it? Like Prince of Persia and Flashback.
Those are good games.
Exactly, but they weren't fighting games. And that's,
yeah.
They were, I believe what they call those were cinematic platformers.
Yeah,
because they had the really
Persia.
rotoscoped characters and stuff. And Shaq Fu is actually the same way. If you actually look at it, the animation in the original Shaq Fu is incredible. Because it's also, like, rotoscoped in the exact same way as Prince of Persia. But in the same way as Prince of Persia, though, the sprites are, like, really bizarrely small, and all that animation means the controls aren't that responsive, and they just weren't people who really knew how fighting games worked. So there's a lot of just weirdness in Shaq Fu. Most people just hate on Shaq Fu because, LOL, it's a fighting game with Shaquille O'Neal in it, starring him. But there's a bit more to it than that. Although there's also a lot of weirdness with the fact that there's so many more characters in the Sega Genesis version than the Super Nintendo one, and it's just a very weird game. But in the realm of bad fighters, I can safely say there was so much worse, and it has a camp charm. But I wouldn't call it good. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
mostly because of that animation. It does animate nice.
A release, I believe, basically everyone who plays a game is excited for next week, I believe. I haven't checked the release date. I believe it is next week. God of War.
Yes, Dad of War comes out next week. That is very true. I think it's at the end of the week, like Friday.
Yeah, I believe it is next week's Friday.
Yeah. And I'm one of the few people who doesn't care. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because it sure looks a lot different from the usual God of War, for better or for worse.
Who knows? I've had so many people contacting me, asking me if I'm going to buy it. I like to tell them, I'm a broke college student. Do you think I can afford new games? I'll wait till it's on sale, then I'll play it after all the hubbub is over.
Probably a good call. I'm personally more excited about Yakuza 6, even though, as I said earlier, people are saying it's not as good as Yakuza 0, but I can't resist that arcade. Like, the arcade for Yakuza 6 sounds utterly insane, so I'm picking up. I'll find a way to pick that thing up.
Gamers always find a way, as I say.
Yes. Moving on. The Shantae Half Genie Hero costume pack is out now, and they are not just costumes. Each one, Ninja Shantae, Beach Shantae, and Mighty Switch Force Shantae, has their own mini what-if story mode. Some of them, like the Mighty Switch Force costume, actually have alternate music. So it is actually a pretty meaty expansion. That came out today. I have not had a chance to play it because I've been having problems with my backer code, but it looks very promising. The game is now complete. They have now completed all the stretch goals, all the DLC. Now we can look forward to Shantae 5, and the Ultimate Edition of Shantae Half Genie Hero is set for May 8th, which will certainly be when I finally get it on Switch.
Speaking of expansions, for you Middle-of-Earth Shadow of War fans, the DLC Desolation of Mordor comes out sometime next month. It has yet to be really announced yet from what I can see on releases.com.
Really? I thought that Shadow of Mordor was, done, because I know...
Well, Shadow of Mordor is done. They released a new game, I believe, last year or early this year,
right,
Shadow of War.
Shadow of War, that's what I meant. I thought that was done, too, because a bunch of people have been commentating on the fact that they are removing the loot boxes for that game, and so we thought that...
Thank you.
Yeah.
The loot boxes for that game were an absolute nightmare, basically forcing you to go to them, almost like Paywall 2.
Yeah, they said they're removing them, that they did feel it hurt the game, and a lot of people are like, yeah, but no one cares about your game anymore, so it is good to hear that after removing the loot boxes, hey, there's a big old DLC expansion coming out. Here's hoping it is a big old DLC expansion and not just something cheap.
A bit on the background of the DLC, you get to play as Captain of Minas Ithil Baranor, who apparently survived the city demise, and I'm not going to go into any more on that for fear of spoilers, but it sounds like it should be pretty interesting for you Shadow of War fans out there. Yeah. Offering probably, hopefully, a slew of new combat scenarios, and it sounds like it's going to be pretty interesting.
Indeed. And then to wrap up the major news that we've got, Chrono Trigger PC is going to be getting a classic graphics patch, which is not nearly enough to fix the game. People are still very mad about it. If you're unfamiliar, Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest JRPGs of all time, according to many people, myself kind of included. And the PC release on Steam is a cheap port of the cell phone version. And...
oh,
yeah, Square...
they've messed up here.
Yeah, Square Enix has been doing this a lot, where a game comes out on cell phone and then they port it to PC. And the only one of those I let slide was Romancing Saga 2, because we never got that game before, and wow, is Romancing Saga 2 amazing. But, yeah, they put a bad filter over the graphics to smooth them out, and a lot of people, didn't like that. It has an awkward... It's flagrantly obvious that it's a cell phone port, because it has, up in the upper right corner, a button that says menu. And it has the cell phone touchscreen interface and a cheap-looking font. And, people just look at it and go, you could have just given us an emulator and a ROM of the game and we would have been happier.
I was about to say, it's just more worth it at this point, just emulate it correctly.
Yeah, of course what people really would like would be a Steam port of the DS version, because the DS version got a new translation and some new content on top of having the anime cutscenes from the PS1 release. And I do hear they have the anime cutscenes in the Steam release, and some of the DS content, but not the new translation, and it's it's a mess. And
fix your game.
Fix your game. Yes, it's been out for over a month, and people, thankfully, they've heard and they said we are going to try to fix our game, but it's like,
it's a big game company.
Yeah, fix it faster. And lastly, Waku Waku 7 is out on PS4 and Xbox pretty much everywhere else in the world except America. As part of
they don't like us.
As part of the Arcade Archive series, some people have pointed out that the Arcade Archive games tend to come out a month later sometimes for America. We're all just scratching our heads and wondering what's going on with this. It's been out since the week after launch for Nintendo Switch, so that's good. And I will say it is the arcade version, so it does not have bonus Kunin Fernandez in versus mode. It is weird that they don't have the home version Switch, but still, Waku Waku 7 is well on its way to PS4. And this makes me extra happy because, of course, I'm one of the world's biggest Waku Waku 7 fanboys, and when they launched the communities system for PlayStation 4, I immediately searched Waku Waku 7, and there was a community just called Please Port Galaxy Fightin' Waku Waku 7 to PS4, and I joined. It was a very poorly put together community, but I joined, and soon, I wound up getting 50 other people to join, and, well, now...
And this is the story about how Gel became the leader of the Waku Waku 7 fan club.
Oh, I've been that for years. Oh, if you knew. But, if anyone's wondering what the heck Waku Waku 7 is, it's a fighting game. Good one. Old Neo Geo game.
Gel's a big fan of fighting games, if you couldn't tell already, because we discussed 7 of them.
Yeah, it happens. Anyway, it is time for a quick break, so here's Regret by Ian Fisher here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back with more GameBabble. That was IDGAF by Dua Lipa here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Gel, and this is GameBabble Live, our video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. I'm joined by spontaneous sidekick Sully.
Still here once again, even after the third break.
And, so we were talking about Rainbow Six Siege, was it?
Yeah, Rainbow Six Siege released back in... it would be 2015 now, saying that because it's the year 3 release came out sometime, it would be January or February, and boy oh boy are people happy with that. The season 1 of year 3, Operation Khmer, introduced 2 new operators, Lion and Finka, who have special abilities, respectively being able to scan for enemies and little microbots that can heal your teammates. It appears to be following the same path of seasons like in Year 2, which Year 2 rocketed their fan base of players from 20,000 players to 100,000 players in the course of a year, making it so that they quintupled the amount of players playing their game, and it only continues to rise.
Yeah, and I know that with the release of the new operators that they've put in the game, it now actually has a fan base in Asia. I have a friend in Hong Kong who's been talking about it, and he's like, this is what the game has needed, and definitely an interesting twist there, and what intrigues me about all of this is that, if I recall correctly, Rainbow Six Siege came out and did not get a very positive reception at launch.
Not very, which can be seen through multiple news articles, which talk about the Year 3 and how it didn't do too well at first on first launch, but as soon as the second year hit, everyone flocked to it, really. There could still be quite a number of fixes that could be done. But it is starting to shape up to be better and better. Everyone loves 99 damage pistols, which means they're better than assault rifles. So a few balancing, but we'll see how it turns out as we continue through Season 1 of Year 3. Season 2 does not yet have a release date or a name as far as I could see, but the season map is out, and we'll continue to see how it goes. I'll watch closely.
Indeed, and what strikes me as interesting is this isn't the only game that's actually done this, because another one that I really recall was The Division. I remember The Division came out and was a complete and utter disaster. Tons of people complaining. I remember there was, actual lines you had to wait in-game to get to the computer in order to get your missions, and it was just a complete dumpster fire of a game. And now, all of a sudden,
quite the train wreck, I will say that indeed. But like you said, it's getting a bigger fan base, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Like, apparently there have been a couple updates, and now it's, like, actually a good game that people enjoy. And I swear there's, like, 1 or 2 other games that came out, were a dumpster fire, and then, like, 2 years later, they're suddenly actually worth playing. I find this to be a very unusual trend, because usually companies would just ditch the old version and release a new version that has all the problems fixed. So it's interesting to see them actually sticking with the game and trying to fix it 2 years later. And I think I'm kind of glad that it's working out. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings because I'm not a huge fan of the games as service model anyway. It's very mixed feelings from me.
Yeah.
But if that is what they're going to do, I guess it's nice that they're doing this, and it's going to be interesting because, well, I guess that raises the question of, well, how that's going to play out for our current dumpster fires, which would be like Star Wars Battlefront 2. We already mentioned Destiny 2, which is already...
I hate that game so much.
So many people.
A lot of people love it simply because it's Destiny, and that was what everyone loved Destiny 1. Pretty much everyone, if you don't count a few actually pretty smart people, but they mainly had problems with the DLC and the codex that you had to go online to get any of the story. But updates to fix games would definitely be better, and recent updates to Destiny 2 have actually had a few players coming back to it, such as fixing certain classes' damages, such as the Dawnbreaker, I believe, which is a Warlock class, the Solar class for the Warlocks, which would allow you to gain wings and fly through the air as you throw fiery swords of destruction down on your enemies. Was horrible. You had like maybe less than 10 seconds in the mode, and you could only throw up to 3 swords before you got out of the mode, and nobody played it except me.
Yeah, and I think the last dumpster fire on the list that, oh boy, it's gonna be a struggle is of course Sea of Thieves. I know they're working hard at fixing that game, but it's interesting that it even launched in the state that it did, and it's gonna be a struggle for them to turn that one around.
One can only hope. It has a certain charm to it, if graphics wise, it can. Really, it's at rock bottom. It can only get better, I feel.
Yeah, that is one good way to look at it. But of course,
I call this the opposite Rust effect. Because Rust went from something interesting to something where everyone is in a love-hate relationship. If you have the AK, you're the best in the game, and you love the game. If you don't, you kind of hate the game.
Yeah. I have not played Rust, but I've heard things about it.
Yep. The game... If you're on a big server, let's just say, prepare to restart plenty of times. My personal experience, that I love the game. I love how it is. I tend to get frustrated with it a lot, but... Other than that, I still think it's a good game, despite its many flaws. Many flaws. I have to say that if you go looking into Rust, you will find everyone has a different opinion on the game, and the reason why is usually the overpoweredness of some weapons. And how hard it is to attain said weapons later on, early on in the game, because everyone else already has them. It does sort of fix itself with a required monthly server wipe that is required by the Rust servers. Some others do it once per week or every other week. And I know some servers, believe it or not, these are mainly modded servers, of course, so they're not really all that official community. They simply have a way, some things like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times servers, which give you basically better loot in containers and give you 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, respectively, amount of resources from different things. Which then they will concede to having a daily wipe or every other daily wipe, so people don't hoard certain weapons and stuff, which I think is great. The one problem with it is, to make these things, you have to get these things called blueprints, which you need material called scrap. When the wipe happens, you get to keep your learned blueprints. So people will spam, will rush to get a high-tier workbench and immediately get the AK day 1, which starts the cycle anew again to people getting angry with the game and quitting.
Sounds like you kind of have to just spend a run farming blueprints.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So that way, when the next cycle starts, you can start off with good weapons. Interesting. Of course, for all of these games to get their fixes and continue going, a lot of that is going to depend on the latest utterly absurd news. Supposedly, reliable sources, quote unquote, are claiming that the PlayStation 5 is on its way, possibly even this year or early next year. To which all I can say is, that's way too soon.
Yeah, they literally, as in actually, just released the PlayStation 4 Pro. So I think a new console development is sort of a farther away. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be getting a few different games this year, such as God of War coming out next week. I don't think we get that this year. Sony knows how to wait when it comes to their games and new releases. The PlayStation 5 would be coming out this year or early next year. They would hold off of God of War until they can release it as a box title.
Yeah, it's, it feels like it's way too early for a PlayStation 5.
It really is.
And, okay, fine. Let's see. November 2013 is when the PlayStation 4, base model came out. So, technically, it has been 5 years, and that's what a console cycle used to be. Emphasis on used to be, because, of course, the 360 PS3 Wii console cycle was, nearly 10 years. And it's a tricky one, because, of course, the people on PC are like, hey, PlayStation 4 is kind of holding us back a little bit. We'd like,
we want Bloodborne.
Yeah, we want, well, not just that.
A variety of PlayStation exclusive games.
Well, it's not that. It's the fact that the PlayStation 4 is not as powerful as many PCs out there today. And people would like to see a new PlayStation that catches up to modern PCs. But at the same time, I think what we have with the PlayStation 4 is really good. I think it still hasn't, it's just now really, only the past 2 years or so has it really picked up steam, because of course...
The Pro.
Well, not just the Pro. The Pro is
the
definitely...
The VR, too. Definitely the VR.
And not just that. I just mean because, game development takes time.
That's very, very true.
Yeah, it takes about 3 years for things to really get going. And so, 2016 was right where things were really starting to take off. And apparently that was, I guess that's when the Pro came out, was actually 2016. So it's actually been out for 2 years. But still, a lot of people, they're still on the, like myself, I'm not even getting the Pro, but a lot of people are still on the, they're not
the
even
original PlayStation 4.
They're on the original PlayStation 4. They're still iffy on the Pro, and I can't blame them because it really wasn't that big of an upgrade for for the price.
60 FPS though is fairly nice, I must say, as a PC player. Coming from a console to a PC is one of the weirder experiences, I say, from the 30 to 60. So it's nice that console players are getting to get that 60. But
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Not every PS4 Pro game can hit 60. It really wasn't that big of an upgrade.
You're totally right on that. And the ones that are meant for the Pro are few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know many people get their PlayStation, especially PC player, they get PlayStation 4 simply before the PlayStation exclusives. It's like, I myself got a PlayStation 4 simply to play Bloodborne, because I'm a humongous From Software fan, and I will do anything for Hidetaka Miyazaki. I probably butchered his name. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, our Lord and Savior of From Software.
But yeah, the Pro is still fresh in a lot of people's minds. The PS4 is still relatively fresh. Yes, it's been out for 5 years, but there's a lot of people who just got their PS4s. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions about the PlayStation 5, especially because Sony does not sound committed to backwards compatibility, because they sort of said, there's no point in even putting that in the PS4. And it's like, that was definitely an issue. And
that, for me, was a big bowl of upsetty spaghetti.
Same here. And it's like, the PlayStation 5, especially if they intend to release it so incredibly soon, is going to need to have PlayStation 4 backwards compatibility, or it will flop. Right now, Sony is at the top of the console game. The PS4 is doing way better than you think it's doing. It is selling like crazy, and I do think they run the risk of sacrificing all of that if they do a PlayStation 5 now, except for one thing, and that's the fact that, honestly, Microsoft and the Xbox brand are kind of in shambles right now. I hate to say it. I don't mean to be mean to Microsoft, but, every week I read the game release list, and you know darn well that the Xbox One gets, like, half the games the PlayStation 4 does, doesn't get a whole lot of exclusives. Couple that with one of the worst interfaces in console history, and that's one of the other weird things. The original Xbox One is weaker than the original PlayStation 4, but the Xbox One X is better than the PlayStation 4 Pro. But in both cases, with the Pro and the X, there aren't enough games that really take advantage of them, and it's just, it's all a mess. And I don't believe Microsoft is going to recapture the market, so that would be Sony's only real boon, except for the fact that now Nintendo is a real competitor, but their system is knowingly less powerful, but at the same time, the whole portability factor is a major thing that is really giving the Switch some traction. It would be very strange, yet very plausible, if the PlayStation 5 flopped and the Switch took over, and that would certainly put the console market in a very strange place.
I don't know how much the Switch compares to the PlayStation, but it has to be actually near on the same level, because if I remember correctly, and this is just going up, I get a lot of news from the Dark Souls community, but basically one of the requirements FromSoft made to get the Dark Souls remasters has to be able to run at 60 FPS. So, and it looked pretty magnificent from the Switch gameplay they released. And it was running at a smooth 60 FPS. So, the Switch may not be as far behind as many people think.
It's somewhere between a PlayStation 3 and 4 in terms of power. At least that's what a lot of people are saying. I guess it is kind of hard to tell, because though we've seen plenty of wonky ports where the Switch version is noticeably inferior to a PlayStation 4 version. There's always the question of if they actually tried to optimize it enough for the Switch.
Yeah,
so
that's a big thing.
It's amazing what some good optimization can do. Now, one of the main things we're hearing about the PlayStation 5 is a massive focus on VR, which, of course, is something that I said, and I'm like, that's when VR is really going to take off, is the PlayStation 5, when they wind up, coming out with a new hardware revision and a system really built for handling VR, and I think that's all
and
very...
new controllers.
And new controllers, and I think all of that is very, very good, except I think we still need just a little bit more time before making that leap. I know there's been a lot of research into what's called inside-out headset tracking, where, like, the cameras are actually inside of your headset looking out, and using that, they're, like, able to do a headset with, like, the goal there is like a headset without having to set up all the sensors all over your room, and same thing with tracking your controllers and stuff. I know there have been work on that. Right now it's a bit prohibitively expensive, and there's some bugs and kinks to work out, but that's something they've been working on. I was kind of hoping the PlayStation 5 would wait until they have those hiccups ironed out. Yeah, once they get that kind of tracking ironed out and know if that's the way we should go. I wanted a lot more improvements to VR. It's very nice right now, but, like, if you're going to make a console generation leap, give it another 2 years. A lot of people are like, 2020 is the perfect time for a PlayStation 5. And I'm like, yeah, no, that sounds about right. 2020 would be perfect, but there's rumors of 2018, and I'm like, that is way too soon. I don't know if things will be as advanced as you'd like them to be, but we'll see, because if it's happening in 2018, or 2019, we'll see it at E3.
Yeah, and people talk about how much PC is way better than these consoles, but I usually always side on the PC master race. But I'm going to put away my Reddit White Knight sword here for a second, and I am going to say that people don't realize that most of these consoles use a lot of the same technology.
They do.
It's mainly software that divides them.
Yeah, and...
On a major point. It's like with the release of Intel's i9 processor taking over the i7, not commercially the most available thing, but in power, definitely taking over. But we may see processors on PlayStation 5 and whatever Xbox, whatever number they decide to release, -1 maybe, may have technology, computer processor-wise, similar to the i7, for all we know.
Yeah. Anyway, though, looking at the time, it is certainly time for a break, so we will be back with more after this break, but until then, here is Portland by Drake featuring Quavos and Travis Scott, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay tuned. That was Run Up by Major Lazer featuring Nicki Minaj and someone else whose name is cut off. Here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell. I'm still joined by a spontaneous sidekick, Sully.
Just for a little bit longer until those 2 p.m. classes start, you know.
Right. And, welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Have to remember Tuesday. So it's kind of a little bit of a slow week, at least on consoles.
PC is just ramping up. Well, it always is. Like, over 100 new games are released every day.
Yeah. So what's been ramping up on PCs?
PC, Far Cry 5, definitely for everyone, I feel, has been a recent, welcome, actually, addition to the Far Cry family. I haven't played it myself personally yet. I've heard some really good things about it, though. Mm-hmm. All my friends who played Rust and Rainbow Six Siege with me have left me. I had to make new friends because they're too busy playing Far Cry 5. Yes, I'm looking at you, Craig. We were playing. They keep on playing. Actually, the games only came out a few weeks ago, and he's already has over like 200 hours, which is kind of ridiculous. Some great stuff though, apparently coming from it.
Yeah, I've heard positive things about Far Cry 5 as well. I still haven't played a Far Cry game. I was going to for a minute, but I didn't because online passes. Because it was Far Cry probably, I don't know, Far Cry 3 or 4 had some kind of online co-op feature, I think, and I remember people were really excited about it, and I was going to join them, but back then we were doing online passes, and so I was like going to rent the game from Family Video and join them that way to see if I liked it. And I remembered, oh yeah, that's right, if I do that I have to pay more money to get an online pass in order to play online.
Yeah.
Screw this. Which is why things are, I admit, I was watching a little bit of Jim Sterling before the show. Me and him have differences sometimes, but recently he did point out that it looks like the AAA loot box scourge may in fact be over.
Thank the video gaming lords.
You can say that again. Because for anyone unfamiliar with what that means, loot boxes are, they're boxes that give you random unlocks. And oftentimes you have to pay real money to get this utterly random unlock. And this is pretty common in mobile games. But a bunch of companies were like, we're going to stick that in our full-price AAA games and see how that goes down.
Not the smartest idea. The first, not the first, obviously, but the most infamous of this was, in fact, EA's Battlefront 2.
Battlefront 2, was very much not the first, but it was the one that officially went over the edge. There were a bunch of games that were trying it. But what happened with Battlefront 2 was that the entirety of progression was loot box based. The
more money you had, the faster you got to progress. To get the first character, Darth Vader, which you could unlock, needed 300 hours of gameplay before they actually removed it, basically the month after. Because of this, EA, this user complaining about the 300 hours complained on the Battlefront 2 subreddit and got an EA response of, "We did it for the pride and accomplishment of gamers," which then granted them one of the most infamous sayings everywhere and the most downvoted Reddit comment in history.
Yeah, people were not happy because with Battlefront 2, they actually had it where you had a card level, and the more star cards, which are all the different unlocks you had, the higher your card level was. It was a complete mess, and what it meant was if you bought Battlefront 2 and then just dumped $100, $200 on it, you were way better off than people who just bought the game normally, on top of the fact that trying to unlock anything without paying real money took eons, and EA tried to come up with all sorts of different excuses, and it got bad enough that there was government intervention where they were like, should we count...
This is gambling.
Yeah, should we count this as gambling? Should we start regulating this? And at the same time, there had been talks that Disney had called up EA and said, "What you doing? I'm hearing bad things about Star Wars. I don't like to hear bad things about Star Wars. What'd you do?" And so, they did take out the loot boxes, and now they were like, they're going to return when we figure out the right way to monetize things, and they're not returning. They're doing some cosmetic DLC, which they claimed they couldn't do, but now they're doing that, and they're changing things up drastically. They removed the loot boxes from Shadow of War, and basically, and a lot of companies like Capcom was actually bragging about the fact that Monster Hunter World has no loot boxes. That became a thing. A number of companies were bragging about it. Some smaller games were like, we're going to take out loot boxes because you're right, because Like, some smaller games even said, we just put the loot boxes in there because we thought that's what you do. Like, it became reflexive. And after seeing the sheer amount of backlash, which is understandable, yeah, a lot of them rolled it back because the problem with loot boxes, okay, fine. DLC, you wind up paying more money to get extra content for your game. With loot boxes, you pay a mysterious amount of money for a chance at getting what you want. It's like, I would rather pay like $5 for a costume that I want than $1 for a chance at getting that costume, because that's what it always turns into, and then you wind up paying like $50 desperately chasing that one costume you want, and no, that's bad, and everyone knows this. I actually argued with people who tried to play devil's advocate for loot boxes, and they're, in the end, they just admitted, I don't like loot boxes either, I just don't think they're that bad. And it's like, so, let's just get this on the record. No one actually liked loot boxes. Like, shoot, I will actually defend DLC because DLC doesn't necessarily have to be terrible. It can be done okay.
True. For me, when it comes to DLC for me, I think DLC is fine if your players aren't needing more, but are wanting more. If you have a fully polished game that players aren't needing more to understand for it to be a good game, and are wanting it, that's where you're a go on DLC.
Yeah, it's... obviously the one I always cite is Dead or Alive 5, which I know a lot of people give it crap for just how much DLC was released, but I felt... When you release new costume packs every month for like a couple of years, you tend to get a lot of costumes. I was okay with this. I felt, because you just buy the ones you want. You don't have to own everything. I think that's where a lot of people had issues, but I felt that DOA 5 did DLC right. I look at DLC as a combination of overtime and a candy bar. I know that's a weird way to put it, but it's like, I'm paying for your DLC because you're adding new content. You're working overtime, and the pricing, unless it's like a full-on expansion, should be looked at like a candy bar or a bag of chips. It should only be a couple bucks for a little bit of bonus content, and since you put in the work, I don't mind paying more. That was my mentality with DLC, and I've seen... there have been companies that have abused it. There have been problems in the past. On-disc DLC was a mess, although you'd be surprised how much Microsoft was responsible for that. And, DLC can be done bad, and has been done bad, but I'm generally okay with it, because there is a right way to do it. There's no right way to do loot boxes.
When I think of good and bad DLC... I speak about Dark Souls a lot, and I'm going to do it again and again and again, probably. But the Dark Souls 1 Artorias of the Abyss DLC, people wanted it. It wasn't they need it. It was they welcomed it full-heartedly. Because it offered more light on the lore. The world that From Software had built, they loved. And so they wanted more. Versus Dark Souls 2's DLC content is the DLC is what made it good. And that's not what you should aim for in a game. You shouldn't need DLC to make the game good.
Indeed. And yeah, so that is... So I'm very happy that loot boxes, especially in like AAA games, are very much getting phased out. I think that's a good thing. And I knew we could do it because of the thing that got me on this topic in the first place, online passes. Couple years back, these were a thing, and what it was if you bought the game new, it came with a little slip of paper with a code on it for you to download a thing that would let you play online. But if you bought the game used, someone probably already used that code, and now you have to pay extra money to get your online pass, and that just... No one liked it. It meant you couldn't, like, really try out the online. It gated things off. It just was a complete mess and a bit of a sham, and everyone complained about the online passes, and they were eventually removed. Amusingly, Dead or Alive 5 is a good example of this, as the original vanilla release had an online pass. As much as I keep forgetting that was a thing, it did, and then Ultimate did not. Anyway, I think it's time for a break, and I know Sully has to go.
Yeah, everyone, can't forget your classes up here at Flow Valley. I have 2 o'clock class, so I'll see you all next week on Tuesday on GameBabble Live.
Look forward to it.
That was Jell, and I'm Sully, and here we go.
All right, yeah, coming up next is... Oh, it is not that. Is Dying Inside by White Oak Staves here on FV The Wave. Thank you so much for listening. That was Just Friends by Morgan Saint here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Joe, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, our video game news and information show, which airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. Unfortunately, it is a strikingly slow news week beyond the things that I've just recently mentioned. Although good news, the first patch for Chrono Trigger on PC is out. It does fix up the text, it fixes up the graphics, let's just read the actual patch notes. Character sprites and background graphics adjusted to be more in line with the style of the original Chrono Trigger. This can be selected from the menu as original graphics and is the new default selection. The font has been updated to give the game a more classic look. Text, which did not match the game experience on PC, has been revised, and a large number of other text issues have been fixed. Fixed the way the word trigger is displayed as it floats in on the title screen, adjusted the order of the demo video and animated opening sequence from the title screen to be more in line with previous versions of the game, and the background gradient of each text window has been adjusted to make it darker towards the bottom. And they say future updates will include interface changes, so that way the game can be played entirely with a gamepad or keyboard. Because yes, in its current state, the ridiculous PC version of Chrono Trigger has, it requires you to use the mouse to click through certain things in menus because it was that crappy of a port. They really could have just emulated it. It would have been better. So yeah, that's a thing. Meanwhile, just really don't know what else to say. One of the, Spyro was obviously, some of the biggest news that got people talking, and other than that was the rumors of the PlayStation 5, which, as we've already stated, way too early. I refuse to believe that, even though supposedly the source has been right about all sorts of other console leaks. The idea that Sony would release the PlayStation 5 this soon is definitely way too soon. People are claiming that the dev kits have been in the wild for more than 2 years now. But again, I question it. I question a lot of things. It's all just so ridiculous. In other news, Mega Man X Legacy Collection 1+2 has been announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. And it's kind of silly because for some reason they're putting it on 2 discs. It's like, what? But you could fit that on one. And then the Switch version is actually going to be a cartridge download combination. It's like, you should be able to fit this on one cartridge. I mean, there's 2 PS2 games in it, and the rest are PS1 and Super Nintendo, and they're all 2D and should not take up that much memory. Either way, it is nice. It is, Disc 1/Collection 1 is Mega Man X through Mega Man X4, with Disc 2/Collection 2 being X5 through X8. Which, that second disc is almost depressing, because X1 through 4 are the good ones, and then X5 through 8 are the kind of iffy ones, although X8 is actually good. I do hope the resolution is improved, though, for the 3D ones, because while I don't think anyone really needs to burn to the burn anymore, Mega Man X8, I would like to see that in HD. That might actually be kind of nice. But, That does mean, though, that there is no Mega Man Extreme, no Maverick Hunter X, and no Command mission. All of which kind of disappointing omissions, but we'll see if Capcom decides to release those later, since they are trying to do a massive, hey, we're bringing back Mega Man push. Which, on that note, I think a couple weeks ago, they actually showed that awful-looking Mega Man cartoon is still happening. I'm sorry. It still looks bad. It looks like a me of the original Mega Man trying to dress up as X. It's kind of a mess. So that's where we're at with that. One of the more interesting pieces of news, this might be something only I care about, is that it is looking like Happy Manager, I've mentioned this before, the game was supposed to be, it's a Japanese-only, like, PlayStation VR dating sim that had the VR portion removed. Well, now apparently it's been put back in, and people are claiming it is the entire game minus certain power-ups. And this is supposedly, I'm getting this from a comment section on Silicone Era, so not necessarily the most reliable source of information, but supposedly the reason why it's that way is due to Sony's... Sony has rules about what can be shown in VR and what can't, and they don't want any content that is too lewd. And supposedly this is why Galgun VR is not on PlayStation 4. This raises many, many, many questions from me. It's funny that this is happening with Galgun again, but this raises many questions. It's like, number one, has this always been in place? Or did this get put in place after the VR for Dead or Alive Extreme 3 was announced? And if so, did Sony do it on their own or through outside pressure? I ask this because when the VR portion... Okay, Dead or Alive Extreme 3, which is not that risque, was already denied a U.S. release due to the fact that they didn't want to deal with the PR nightmare of releasing a game like that here, even though the Extreme Beach Volleyball games were made for a Western audience. But yeah, there was, they said, no, we just don't want to deal with it, it's Japan only. Fine. But after that, they were like, okay, we're putting in this VR patch, and there was a preview, and even though the game is not released in America, has already been denied a U.S. release, Polygon decided to throw a fit and call it a sexual harassment simulator, which it was a slow news day, so everyone, even outside of the gaming sphere, picked up on it and got it completely wrong, because very few people mentioned this is a free VR patch for Extreme 3, and thought that it was going to be a completely separate game, which in turn had people complaining because it looks like it doesn't have any gameplay, not realizing that it's a separate bonus VR mode that was going to be free if you already bought the game, and it turned into this complete mess. And yeah, the VR mode didn't come out until months later, and any interaction with the girls was completely removed. I am wondering if that's because Sony stepped in because of the international hubbub this caused. If so, I am going to be very livid, because OEGAD, you have no clue how much I want to play Galgun VR, because that would drastically improve the game, because Galgun is a light gun game if you've never played it, and for some reason, they keep not including PlayStation Move support, but if it was in VR, it would have had PlayStation Move support and thus been better. Thus far, only the original game's PS3 port had Move support. Now, this all strikes me as interesting because of how it parallels what happened with Galgun and the fall of the 360. Because the Xbox 360 was the most successful Xbox in Japan. It wasn't particularly successful, but it had a fan base amongst people who made and played lewd games. Because for some reason, Xbox wound up with this weird stigma in Japan of being the perverts console. And so a lot of games like that were released exclusively on Xbox 360, and this was the source of its entire Japanese fandom. Because if you want to play anything else, you'd play it on PS3 in Japan. So that was the way things were going until the release of the Kinect and the announcement of the original Galgun. Many people forget the original Galgun was a 360 game, and many people incorrectly thought that it was a Kinect game. And with the launch of the Kinect, Microsoft wanted to be more family-friendly. And so, Galgun was forced to censor itself. But the game actually wound up releasing uncensored. Microsoft found out about it. And, even though they did a censored trailer, the game released uncensored, and then Microsoft found out about it and forced them to release a censor patch for the original Galgun. When it came to PS3, not only was it uncensored, it was anti-censored, which coupled with the PlayStation Move support and many other additions made the PlayStation 3 release vastly superior. But we never got that one. We only got Galgun Double Peace, which inexplicably had no Move support, even though the PS4 supports the Move, even before the PlayStation VR came out. It is definitely something that drastically enhances the game because it's a light gun game, and light gun games work really well in VR. So I'm going to be kind of pissed if it turns out that Polygon's whining is the reason why Polygon making a mountain out of a molehill winds up being the reason why Galgun VR and Happy Manager wound up one not coming out on PlayStation VR and the other turning into a complete mess. If that winds up being the source of the problem, let's just not have words. Let's just stop talking about that because that's the kind of thing that makes me very, very heated. I know it seems minor and stupid, but a foreign publication complaining about games that aren't getting released in their own country anyway, causing worldwide backlash, yeah, that kind of annoys me. So yeah, there is that. I am curious to find out how true this is, though. That's the important thing. Like I said, this is the first I've heard of this being a guideline for VR. And, of course, this is the kind of thing that publishers tend to keep under wraps and you don't find out about because of non-disclosure agreements. So, I don't know how true or untrue this statement is, and I don't know what caused it. But one of the things someone pointed out, it's weird because that content is allowed as long as you're not in VR. It's just not allowed in VR. Okay? I find that a little weird. And you realize you're not going to be able to stop people from doing things like this because VR is defined by the amount of freedom it gives you. So goofy things like this tend to happen, whether you like it or not. But either way, I'm glad to hear that Happy Manager has some VR put back in, and that's the thing I'm going to mostly be doing some research on, because Happy Manager looks like the kind of game that without VR is completely pointless and stupid. And I have a mild interest in it because it does seem so interesting, but if the VR is just a model viewer, then I'm going to wait until it drops in price drastically. It's like, but if it's the full game, that might be another story. So I'm going to have to research the crap out of that, which is proving to be very hard, because I tried researching this earlier because this patch that put the VR back in came out last month, and it's hard to find really full VR gameplay videos of it, just due to the fact that it's a Japanese-only game that not a lot of people imported, supposedly isn't all that good, and most Japanese players don't have a PlayStation VR, let alone recorded themselves playing it in VR. So it's all sorts of up in the air. Who knows? So yeah, that is a thing. Like I said, I'm a little desperate for news here because there's not a whole lot happening right now. It's not exactly the summer game drought, but it's in that zone. We're kind of in that zone, and so I'm like, I don't know what else there is to discuss. But I'm sure we'll figure something out. Oh, interesting. Here's another piece of it. Apparently, Dragon Quest XI for Switch is delayed due to an outdated Unreal Engine 4? Huh. I'll have to read up a little on this. Anyway, it is certainly time for us to take a break, so I'm going to kick you back to the music with There She Go by Fettiwap here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for more GameBabble Live after the break. Thank you so much for listening. That was Can't Believe by Cranium featuring Ty Dolla $ign and WizKey here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jel. Welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show. It airs every Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m., so that does mean we're in the last section of the show, wrapping things up, which is good because it has been a relatively slow news week. Like I said, the very announcement of the Spyro remakes has been the biggest news, followed by rumors of the PlayStation 5. And yeah, apparently got a little bit more information on what's going on with the Switch version of Dragon Quest XI. Basically, the version of Unreal Engine 4 that the game was built on did not support the Nintendo Switch, and now they have to update their copy of Unreal Engine 4 to support Nintendo Switch, which is going to create a number of problems and could break things. And so they're like, yeah, this is going to delay things. Switch version is still coming, but everyone's going to have to hold on. And they considered delaying the PlayStation 4 release, so that way it could be simultaneous with Switch, but they decided against it. What's interesting, though, good, we've got a release date, September 4th, and it'll be on PlayStation 4, and this is the interesting thing, and PC. Dragon Quest XI will have a PC release, which makes sense. It's on Unreal. But still, that's very interesting. Good to see that it is coming very soon. I'm very excited about that. It looks like a good, fun game. Very nice visuals, nice and kind of cartoony, and yeah, it looks like it'll be fun. Also, it looks like Killing Floor Incursion is set to hit PlayStation VR May 1st. It looks to be a spin-off of the Killing Floor series where you're like, it's story-based, single-player or co-op, surviving against zombie hordes. The important thing is I get melee weapons and I get to hit people with, get to hit zombies with them, which is good because I like melee weapons in VR. Also, Toki is apparently getting a remake on Nintendo Switch. An HD remake with all new sprites that was announced years ago, and it's finally getting off the ground as the company that was doing the remake went under, and now they're back. If you don't remember, Toki was an old video game about a monkey that spit energy balls. It was weird. But now it is going to be coming to Switch in HD. Here's hoping it turns out nice. Apparently, the person who ported it to the Amiga many, many, many years ago is handling this remake port thing. And he's very excited to be working on the game again. So here's hoping that it turns out all right. Even though, wow, what a massive, massive delay that was. And that is about where we're at with that. Cripes, I hope the rumors about the PlayStation 5 aren't true. I expect them to possibly start showing off the PlayStation 5 at E3. That wouldn't surprise me. The idea of it coming out this year or early next year, a little iffy. Little iffy on that. I'm still not a big fan of the idea of a PlayStation 5. But it pretty much requires backwards compatibility or it's done. And it would be really weird if Sony screws up hard enough for the Switch to actually take over. Because right now, the Nintendo Switch kind of has its own little weird market that has a lot of appeal and is very popular with a number of people. It really managed to carve out its own niche, and it would be very strange. It carved out its own niche, but it's also, not a particularly powerful system. It still has plenty of flaws. It would be very strange if Sony managed to screw up to just give the console generation to Nintendo. The only thing stranger would be if Microsoft could actually make a comeback, because they've all but abandoned the Xbox One. I hate to say it like that, but their whole Play Anywhere thing is kind of a big deal. Basically, anything on Xbox One can also be played on PC, as long as you have Windows 10, because Windows 10 and the Xbox One are very, very, very similar. And so, yeah, just Xbox One games can, I don't know if it's all of them, but most of them can be played on Windows 10. And it's what's the point in even owning an Xbox One then? It's a very odd situation they've put themselves in. And yeah, I don't really see Microsoft changing that. I don't feel they've put enough effort into salvaging the Xbox One. Their best thing is the backwards compatibility that they've shown, which still isn't 100%. And that would, of course, be another question if they released a new Xbox as well, is are you going to get backwards compatibility right this time? Which I doubt they will, but who knows. So many things are up in the air. Anyway, yeah, I really don't know what else there is to say. Yakuza 6 is coming soon. We got that new God of War coming out very soon. And I'm excited for fighting games. I don't know. I think we might actually be out of topic, so I guess it is time to wrap it up. Yeah, wow, all the things I'm seeing release dates. I just noticed on Gematsu they're saying Spider-Man PS4 launches September 7th, so everyone's gearing up for next September. Looks like it's going to be a pretty dry summer, isn't it? But hey, at least Mario Tennis Aces is going to come out in the middle of that, and that looks amazing. A new trailer for that actually showed, which showed a character select screen, and shows that Spike will be playable in the game. Spike being a very goofy-looking enemy character who was playable in Mario Party 10, should be returning for Mario Tennis Aces. We'll see how the game turns out. I'm very excited for Mario Tennis Aces. But yeah, it's about where we're at. I think the only other thing to comment on is, egad, are there a lot of fake Pokemon announcement trailers on YouTube? Seriously, I was just there, and this one channel's like, Nintendo Direct, Pokemon Plus and Minus confirmed for Switch. And that exact same channel says Pokemon Future and Past, Pokemon Monochrome and Color. It's like, no. Stop. It's amazing how easy it is for them to just splice together fake trailers and come up with new Pokemon version names. It's like, no. Just stop. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today on GameBabble Live. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate our spontaneous sidekick, Sully, who is currently in class. He really did come out of nowhere. Just people down at the stage were like, hey, here's a guy who's going to talk on your show. Bye. And it was like, okay. It works out pretty darn well, to be honest. It's always good to have another person there and someone who has more normal taste in games. So, very much appreciated. So I'd like to thank him for his wonderful job on the show. Had a good time. And yeah, I hope to catch you next week, next Tuesday from noon to 3 p.m. here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music, for your diverse mind. Until then, though, here is Fool by Fitz and the Tantrums. Here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Hope to catch you next week. See you then.